Okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening around this wild world of ours. And this is one of our shows where we want to focus on a hugely important part of the world, both strategically and economically, and in terms of the great battle for of human belief that determines what the dominant belief systems in the world are going to be over the next century and beyond. We're going to Africa, we're going to Nigeria. Now, and we're very privileged to have on a leading American expert on the conflicts tearing Nigeria apart, an issue of a huge importance to, should be of huge importance to Americans, but they are woefully ignorant of it and show, alas, marginal interest in the great battles that go on there for control of the oil between different tribes, between the forces of militant Islam and a vibrant, powerful, resurgent Christianity that has surged in Nigeria over the last 60 years. Nigeria is not some tiny little corner of the world. It is one of the most populous countries in the world with a population of 200 million people and more, comparable to Brazil. It has huge oil reserves, and it is also the front line for the confrontation between militant Islam and surging Christianity across Africa. We are very privileged to have on today a leading American expert on Nigeria who has briefed Congress, who is consulted by the Trump administration on the issues tearing Nigeria apart and shaping its future. Mike Arnold, welcome on board. What should we most focus on first and foremost in Nigeria today? And
Thank you so much.
why did President Trump authorize the bombing of targets in Nigeria not so long ago?
Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Yeah, most people when I first started going to Nigeria in 2010, and I've been there 16 times in depth. I mean, all over. I couldn't find Nigeria on a map. I didn't know the difference between Nigeria and Ghana and Swaziland, just an African country. Nigeria is the sixth largest nation on earth. It's the youngest large population on earth, average age of just over 18. And they're on track to be the third largest nation on earth by 2050, which is vital because the rest of the industrialized world is aging and shrinking, top heavy. And that's why there's such an international land grab for minerals and resources now. It's because the populations of the US, the baby boom, Russia, China, and so on, you have this mass population getting retirement age. You don't have the youth to support it. Nigeria has that youth. They're a top five member of OPEC. They have $1 trillion in minerals, and it's the kind of minerals in your phone and your electric car. That's huge, $1,000 billion in minerals. And that's a big driver. China is currently looting about $9 billion a year and paying the jihadis and paying the corrupt generals and politicians. Um, Nigeria, the trajectory of this great nation that currently produces more films every year than Hollywood. You've seen them on streaming. You didn't realize Nigeria. The music dominates the charts. Afrobeats is huge. It's a vibrant, huge population. Wherever they settle around the world, they rise to the top. They're very influential, very capable people. This trajectory is being fought over. Who's going to control it is going to have a significant influence in the future. And right now, you have the unholy trinity of radical Islam, you have the communist Chinese, and you have the globalists who are in there raping, looting, pillaging as they've done for hundreds of years. And then you have the nascent, as you mentioned, the Christian, entrepreneurial, freedom-loving, peace-loving people. Again, wherever they go around the world, they rise to the top, but they're strangled
Yes,
there where they have the resources in the land. They can't because they're strangled. So that's the fight. Who's going to control this trajectory? The Islamists intentionally state that their ambition is Sharia law across Nigeria and then use it as a launch pad for global jihad. Imagine that. Right now, there's between 10 and 12 million displaced with up to a 50% chance of radicalization. We could very feasibly see 5, 6 million more radical jihadis with $1 trillion mineral wealth, led by ISIS and Al Qaeda, who have set up shop there, using that as a launch pad for global jihad. And it's happening with the full covering and support and collaboration of their government, which is a phony democracy. It's an Islamic regime with a phony democracy. For example, the current president recently appointed a man who is now in control of their national curriculum, 50 million plus students learning from his curriculum. His claim to fame, his expertise is his manifesto that he wrote, The Islamization of Knowledge. And when you read that, he calls for the purging of all Western thought, Western education, for the Islamization of the curriculum. That is literally, by definition, the manifesto of Boko Haram, which means Western education is forbidden. This is Boko Haram's top scholar who is in charge of the curriculum for 50 million Christian, Muslim, across the board Nigerian children. The ideology of the classroom this generation, as Abraham Lincoln said, is going to be the ideology of government in the next. When you have these millions and millions of Nigerian children that are growing in this trajectory with $1 trillion in minerals, and they're being schooled literally daily in Islamic thought. And it's the Islamic thought that is behind the same flavor of Islamic thought is behind the murders and rapes and massacres and genocide. That is a very, very dangerous situation for this world.
What is happening in the murder, rapes, and genocides, Mike? Because unfortunately, you know all too well, they are not covered by the mainstream media, our so-called drive-bys, our amazing networks. But we don't want to focus on that. We want to focus on the Nigerian problem. What are they ignoring? What are they burying up? What is the scale of this?
So, first of all, to put it in context, there's a massive narrative war raging. The Nigerian government, as of right now, has $10 million in U.S. lobbying contracts that are in the works. That they're very aggressive with the media around the world. They suppress the journalists there. They're paid off. They have no real journalism, very little real journalism there. There are some heroes, but here's the thing, the most credible numbers come from a group called Inner Society. Of course, the New York Times has taken a whack at them to try to diminish them, but I'm familiar with this group. They say since 2009 there have been 120,000 Christians killed and about 60,000 peaceful Muslims killed as well. They say join or die. And that's the current. There's as many as 10 to 12 million displaced. Again, since 2009, about 20,000 churches burned, schools destroyed. It's psychotic. But that is just a snapshot. And the real picture, if you look at it in history, the world has ignored and completely erased a genocide that happened there between 1967 and 1970 with
I
as
know about
many
that. Go on.
as 3 to 5 million
Yes.
children starved to death intentionally as a tactic to subjugate the Christian South. That
If
is
I may,
erased from history. The
if I
Biafra.
may for a moment, anyone who simply listens to you will simply say, oh, this is a marginal podcast. This is a guy who is fanatical about his issue, this, that, and the other, and they'll shrug it off. I am in a unique position to confirm everything you have just said, Mike, because
Mm.
as a teenager at the time, all the wonderful British public, my wonderful baby boom generation in Britain, was all up in arms about the monstrous, worse than Nazi evils of the United States in Vietnam. It was their protests were hysterical, cowardly, hypocritical, contemptible. Nobody was involved in protests about the Biafra genocide and the slaughter and murder of 3 to 5 million Igbo people, including at least 2 million children, as you said at the time. I I didn't do much. I marched in the protests. I waved the banners, but I also had one unique opportunity. I had a chance to meet the British Foreign Secretary of the time, Michael Stewart, at a Labour Club meeting. It was all very English and civilized and polite at Oxford University, and I asked him to his face what he felt like being a mass murderer comparable to Adolf Hitler and Eichmann. I thought he would rant and rave at me, but no, the evil little shit was full of fake compassion. He said, I can't sleep at night, but what else can we do in our policy? Our policy is the humane policy, this, that, and the other. He had his conscience perfectly trained to jump through hoops on behalf of British Petroleum and the oil interests of the City of London. It was exactly as you said, even then. But please go ahead. As I say, I'm in a position to confirm everything you have just said, and I do so.
Sorry,
Well,
just
thank
to
you.
ask a younger generation's questions. The Biafra War, of course, I remember. I mean, Oberyn War went there and called his daughter Biafra, Biafra War. That's all I remember.
Yes,
It's slightly tasteless remark, but I can't. Was it well, the Igbos were the victims, right, in eastern
Correct.
Nigeria,
yes,
and it was it the
they were, and they
Yoruba?
were Christians. The
Yeah,
Hausa,
right. And was it the Hausa who ganged up against them, the Muslims
It's
in the
yes,
really
north?
yes.
So that
well.
was a
And
religious war. Okay, I wasn't
yes,
that
but
aware of that.
then, as today, the federal government, by a military coup in those days, they were pretty open about their military coups in those days, had seized control of the entirety of Nigeria, which itself was an artificial construct
Yeah,
built by the British Empire for
right,
administrative convenience by Lord Logard in 1900. Uh, the Hausa tribes of the north and the Christian Igbos of the south
right.
could have gotten along perfectly well if the British had not crammed them together and through a combination of cynical manipulation, sheer evil, and most of all, unlimited stupidity, arrogance, and ignorance, had crammed them together into a winner takes all monstrous
Yeah.
kleptocracy.
So it
Exactly.
was a
So
religious war. I thought it was just an interesting war, and then I didn't even think of the
No, it
Muslims
was
as
a very
victims.
religious war.
Right, Mike.
absolutely, it's a
Yeah,
combination, and
right,
the British
Yes,
used it masterfully. And if you look all over the
right.
world where they left colonies behind, they shackled disparate, incompatible people groups
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
So it was designed to fail.
yeah.
It's just a little, to back up just a little bit. So it was
So carry on
the
your narrative, yeah, Mike. Yeah,
yeah,
let's not
yeah.
interrupt. Yeah,
So it was go back to 1804. A and the dominant tribe that drives the caliphate, that drives all this, is the Fulani. They're actually from the Sahara. They swept in
yeah,
and they co-opted the Hausa. They knocked off the
right.
kings and took over. But it's really the Fulani, and that's who's doing the killing still today. And that's who controls the government. 1804, Usman Dan Fodio, Fulani warlord, launched a jihad. Same pattern as today: killings, raping, destruction, displacement, and established the largest pre-colonial empire in African history, the
Wow.
Sokoto Caliphate. And that's what the British found in the late 1800s when they showed up in the north, controlled by a Sharia law, brutal, genocidal caliphate. The British did not destroy that. They co opted it. They called it indirect rule. They kept them in place, and it is still, in all Islamic thought, a caliphate. It was just rebranded, and the British sort of sat on and used them as the useful idiots. In the South, the British found a vibrant, entrepreneurial, bright, friendly population. This is the people in the South and Southeast, primarily the Igbo, that embraced English language, high tea, the whole thing. Went to school, embraced Christianity, and the British used them to run this enterprise. Two separate corporations, never really a colony, the North and the South. It was 1914 that Lord Lugard stitched these two together, amalgamation. His girlfriend picked the name Nigeria
Huh.
and foisted on these people, and they left control in the North as the enforcers. And fast forward 1950s, unfortunately for the Igbo, they discovered oil, one of the world's largest untapped oil reserves, sitting right underneath the feet of these entrepreneurial, bright, vibrant people. At the time of their independence in 1960, it was Frederick Forsyth that said this was the fastest growing economic region on earth at the time for a decade. I mean, very vibrant, amazing people. And So the British gave them independence as this amalgamated nation, but the British own. In fact, you may know this, the Harold Smith story. He was a British administrator there, and he documents that when they handed it off at independence in 1960, they were instructed from above, ensure that the North keeps control. They rigged it that way. And so fast forward, the South, the Igbo were trying to make it work. And then in 1966, the North, the Fulani, the Islamists started a pogrom, killed about 30,000 Igbo. I mean, men, women, and children with the military's involvement. And
Yes.
they retreated, a couple million of them, between 1 and 2 million, retreated south. 1967, they finally had enough. They'd only been independent for 7 years. Said, we can't, this won't work. We can't be shackled with these people. They want to kill us. They're killing us. And they declared independence, Independent Republic of Biafra. The British had an option. Do we back our friends, the ones that have embraced us, that love us, that speak our language, that worship the same God? Do we back them? And they have the oil, but they'll want it for themselves. They'll want to build refineries. They don't want to just let us take the raw materials. Or do we go with the North? They backed the caliphate. They armed the caliphate. They provided military support to the caliphate. And it was the Nigerian military with full British backing. They were shooting down Red Cross aid planes. They enforced a total blockade. The British just called it a tactic. It is what it is. And the US looked away, the UN looked away. And as many as 3 to 5 million Biafrans, mostly children, were starved to death by a British backed blockade so that they could keep the oil. And to date, if you use current dollars, they've extracted about $2 trillion in oil from there.
Wow.
The people who are on the ground above it get nothing but corruption, pollution, and death. The people in the north have nothing to do with it, get rich, they have control. In 1999, the military dictator said, "Oh, we better make this look like a democracy," and wrote and established unilaterally wrote and established a constitution that cynically starts with "we the people." That constitution that's still in effect mentions Sharia and Islamic terminology 165 times and not one mention of Christianity. They built their presidential compound in 1989 with 2 mosques and no chapel, yet they call it a secular democracy. It's completely jerry-rigged, gerrymandered, and lopsided. It's locked into Northern Caliphate control from 1804 to today. So when you talk about today's genocide, you can't really start in 2009 and 125,000 killed. You have to look back, and when you do, it's on par with the Nazi Holocaust with numbers. It's truly on par, one of the longest ongoing and largest genocides today.
Mike, I mean, I've lived in the UK for most of my life, and we don't read this version of Nigeria at all, and I don't have any reason to doubt you. I mean, I'm very skeptical of what the British Empire has done, but for the only time I can remember in my lifetime that Nigeria has come up as a news story was during the Ken Saro-Wiwa case. So Brits watching this will know if I say the name Ken Saro-Wiwa. Does that mean anything to you? And
No, I'm
how
not
did he?
familiar with
Okay, sorry. Well, Martin.
Yeah. First of all, again, I know very little about Nigeria, but I still know more about it than 99.999% of both the British public and the American public alike, for overlapping those somewhat different reasons. And I'm in a position to confirm, of course, unfortunately, everything you've said, Mike, everything you've said. Now, follow-up question. What is the Trump administration's current policy towards Nigeria? And what should it be doing? And before we go into that, if I may add one point, that there were in the 1960s, and if you have any comment on what they're doing today, please go in. There were 2 major global players, and arguably a third, who were unlikely heroes of this, who stood away from the genocide. There were 2 real heroes: the government of France under President Charles de Gaulle, and the Vatican, with its Caritas, as it was then known, global relief agency. Now, Caritas does an enormous amount of good and admirable, even miraculous work around the world. There are Protestant and Muslim too, and also Jewish aid organizations that all do outstanding work around the world. But Caritas is without question the biggest, the best, the most incorruptible, the one that does the most good, that feeds the most people, that educates and protects the most people. That's the first point. And also another improbable half good guy, I say half for obvious reasons, was the Soviet government at the time, because their interest was more in blocking American interests and British interests. but for their own reasons, they gave no. Actually, I correct that. They were among the bad guys. They had
Yeah.
probably enough. And correct me. Give the detail here. They were acting in full agreement with Britain and British Petroleum and the American government at the time. It was a capitalist communist conspiracy. It comes back to me. But what should we be doing now as well? So lots of questions for you.
Sure, yeah. So I can confirm, from my knowledge, the Catholic Church did heroic work back then,
Yes.
running this airlift. Again, 8 planes were being shot down. Amazing stories. There was a landing strip outside of Owerri, where they would hide in the bushes until they heard the planes overhead. They'd run out, light up the runway. They'd land, and then they'd pull the lights back down. And even then, they'd be bombed and shot. And that was the Catholic, largely Catholic Church that was doing this airlift, which makes it really sad for me to see the current Pope trying to sweep it all under the rug.
Well,
Uh,
well, well. And he's
but
American, of course.
but the well, he's left wing, of course. But
Yes,
but
exactly. You're
the
right.
but an interesting, and it's a really, somebody needs to do a movie on this because no one would believe it. You had British mercenary pilots flying Soviet MiG aircraft at the height of the Cold War in Nigeria. That just blows my mind.
Wow.
But so, love them
And
or
they were
hate
the bad guys.
them. Love,
And they
yeah,
were with the government, the Islamist government, shooting at the Igbos, right? Right.
and shooting down Red Cross planes. Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
The so love them or hate them, whatever other policies you disagree with, their personality, Trump has been doing some really heavy lifting, I believe, in a very good way globally.
Good.
And I believe that I want to believe he knows what's going on there, but I have a lot of concerns because of the people he's surrounded with.
I
Uh,
agree.
First, the Nigerian government is spending at least, on the record, presently, right now, $10 million to lobby Washington. They've hired conservative Republican people with Trump ties. That's one thing. Trump's senior advisor to Africa and the Middle East, Mossad Boulos, is a Lebanese Nigerian American. He has multiple passports. He's lived in Lagos for decades. And there's a Lebanese mob that's pretty significant there, headed by a man named Gilbert Chaguri. You can look him up. He's got a money laundering conviction, banned from the U.S. for terrorism funding. This man had, in last year, received, I believe it's 80% of the federal budget of Nigeria under no bid contracts from the current president, doing these massive public works job, including a $13 billion highway. And his preferred equipment provider on record is the company, is Mossad Boulos' family company. So Trump's senior advisor on Africa and the Middle East is currently profiting from multi-billion-dollar no-bid contracts. He's the preferred equipment provider to the recipient of these contracts. That's documented. And this is the guy telling Trump, and he parrots verbatim the talking points of the northern imams when he's advising Trump. And it's horrific. Those talking points, the global warming, the farmer-herder crisis, conflict, all that, you can trace its origin to a think tank funded by George Soros that hired a career Sharia propagandist to write that narrative, testing it to see that it elicited sympathy for the herders, because the Fulani historically are a herdsman tribe. That narrative that dominates the media, the UN, and governments around the world was written by a career Sharia propagandist hired by George Soros. That's a fact.
So is that the reason why, are they using that as a pretext to encroach on the farmers' lands by saying the global warming has prevented us from staying in the north and we have to move south? That's it.
Yeah, I think it's a big misunderstanding because all the survivors, all the escapees, all the videos they film of themselves, it sounds like they're yelling Allahu Akbar, but I think they're just yelling, I am warm, I am warm.
Right.
That's all right. No, they actually yell Allahu Akbar when they hack people's heads off. They still film the videos today,
Right.
the mass of people kneeling down, hacking their heads off, holding them up, the crowd's cheering.
Right.
That happens right now today in Nigeria still.
So what is it with when Trump bombed? It seemed to be a one-off.
Yeah.
and then
So
he's lost enthusiasm for us. So what's going on there? Was it a one-off, or is he as part of a strategy, or is
I
he
wish I knew. The fact
confronted?
is, Trump is entangled in Iran. I don't think he intended to be there that long.
Hmm.
And he's not going to be able to go and drop more bombs on Nigeria until then. There's a lot of hope because he seems to have X-ray eyes about some of these things. I don't think Mossad Bulus, by the way, senior advisor is Tiffany Trump's father-in-law. It's all in the family. That's the guy that's currently profiting from the no-bid contracts from the Nigerian government. Um, I hope and believe, and some of his advisors, Representative Riley Moore, Senator Ted Cruz, they're starting to get it. Okay, I gave a briefing a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago, at the Capitol, and I said that working with the Nigerian government to end the genocide is like working with the Third Reich to end the Holocaust, and
Yes.
I can vouch for, I can document that. That is the reality. These advisors, Riley Moore especially, started with, oh, we can work with them, we can work with them. I think he's starting to see clearly now. So I have hope. And I have to say this, I'm not a partisan, but if Trump's party loses the midterms, I think Nigeria is gone forever. I think if Trump loses his ability to intervene, because the fact is, it was the Obama administration that ushered in the current jihad to get a radical Muslim elected over an accidental Christian president. And the Biden
Wow.
administration did everything they could to cover it up.
Wow.
And so, we'll love them or hate them. If you want to see Nigeria liberated and this trajectory of this great nation
Mm.
go towards peace and liberty and prosperity, it's important that Trump, I think, that he stay in power long enough to do something decisive
I
there.
mean, Obama. I don't know much about Obama, but he did grow up in Indonesia
Yeah.
and was a Muslim stepfather or something. So, do you think he's been an enabler of the Nigerian genocidal regime back when he was in power?
I don't think so. I know so. It's documented. Nigeria had an accidental Christian president, Goodluck Jonathan. He took office when the former president died. He was a token vice president, and then it was right before the election, so he won like LBJ. Shouldn't have been, but he was. And at the time, that was my first trip. Nigeria was the only nation on earth where radical Islam was being pushed back, and it was booming. The economy as well. It was peaceful, and this was right during Obama's Arab Spring. So Obama, for one, refused to name Boko Haram a terror organization. I was in Abuja when they blew up the UN headquarters in Abuja, and he still refused to call it a terror organization. Millions, it's reported, of jihadis from North Africa that came down, set up shop there. Al Qaeda, ISIS set up shop. Obama pulled U.S. military aid and assistance and blocked the president, Goodluck Jonathan, from using U.S. military aid and assistance. And he blocked him from going to other countries, blocked Israel and South Africa from providing assistance, left him dangling, sent David Axelrod to be the campaign advisor to this northern Muslim warlord who had called for global Sharia law. He was the man picked by Boko Haram to mediate with the government. David Axelrod managed his campaign when Obama was pulling support from Jonathan and blocking him from support and issuing statements in favor of Buhari. So, yes, it was very intentional, very clear. I don't think they'd ever expected anybody to pay this much attention to it. But the fact is, it's unequivocal. Obama handed this regime off to this radical Muslim Boko Haram mediator from northern Nigeria.
I mean, you're
That's
giving
a
us
fact.
incredible perspectives. I mean, incredible, Mike. I mean, Martin, we've only got 4 minutes left. Unless you've got another question, I just what you said in the pre-talk there that you were Nigeria's Jane Fonda. Can you explain that?
Well, they wanted me to be. It was in late September. Bill Maher and Ted Cruz started talking about this. It became an issue. Trump threatened CP, country of particular concern designation. The Nigerian government panicked. I'm very well connected there. The National Security Advisor in Nigeria and a gentleman who's currently now an ambassador called me on October 5th and said, please come help. And they set up a press conference. I was on a plane a week later. They wanted me to be the Jane Fonda of Nigeria. I had other plans. I was advised that they would kill me. I actually updated my will and said farewell to my kids before I left. I didn't know I was coming home. I went through
Wow.
their stooge tour and I got to the international press conference and I told the truth. I had a car waiting outside, jumped in, drove to the airport, and I didn't breathe until the plane took off. But that was seismic. I had almost no followers online before that, October 14th. I now have over 300,000. That got, by reports, the echoes. I mean, everything stopped in Nigeria. The Nigerian Senate that same day convened an emergency meeting. They sent delegations to Washington. That triggered everything. Over 3 billion global impressions in 72 hours, flipped the global narrative. And that's why they say Trump is involved today, is because of that. And I cover all this, by the way, in my book. It's called Epicenter, Nigeria, Radical Islam and the War for Global Order. Anybody that wants more information, the history, and it's not a dense, heavy read. It's succinct, but it's enlightening. I
Mike,
encourage.
and we'll put the links in our box. I think we've got to end there, but I mean, we'd love to have you on again. It's an incredible story that you've got there. Really exciting. I'm afraid we've got to end there. We've got a minute left. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much, Martin. See
Mike,
you.
Come back as soon as possible, ASAP.
I will.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mike.